Hi, everyone. This is on, right? I'm Benjamin Lindsay, senior editor at Backstage. I hope you enjoyed the screening of the first 2 episodes of season 2 of Fleabag. Of course, the star of the evening, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, is here. So without further ado, she'll join us now. Hello, Phoebe.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you, it's my pleasure.
First of all, we're coming off of some great news today. You have a book coming out November 5th based on Fleabag. And you're kind of making the rounds talking to people like me for your 11 Emmy nominations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was just thinking about it, and it's funny that something that started as a one-woman show, presumably a one-off thing, you've gotten a lot of mileage out of it.
Yes, I've been milking it since 2013,
Yeah.
so as much out of her as I can.
Yeah. Well, what's been the most surprising part for you, just with living with this character for so long in a way that you're not necessarily expected?
I mean, every stage of it is a surprise, really. I mean, even when we first took the play to Edinburgh, and it was just this tiny little gang of us, and just... I didn't catch that.
You'll have to speak up for Siri.
I'm sorry, Siri. I'll be clearer with my elocution for you. Maybe an American. Maybe that's what Siri likes. That was the most surprising thing that's happened to me since this whole process. But I think every stage of it, because it was always just one foot in front of the other with this show, and even doing the play in the first place was sort of like, let's see, it's sort of, it was so personal, and it was such a risk it felt like such a risk just to say the things that I really thought women say privately to each other, and that resonated. And then getting the pilot, and then Amazon coming on board, and every single element of it. But I think probably the most surprising is the fact that that we made a season 2. I never imagined that in a million years. It was a dream to make the first series, but the second one I was sure I wouldn't think of anything to come back, because it felt like such a closed story by the end. It felt like it was an ending, and so for it to have happened and come out and to have this response was just the most extraordinary feeling in the world.
Certainly. And we kind of start getting a taste of it in this episode in the therapy scene. Fiona Shaw, incredible. But at least from my perspective, it seems very natural in the transition from stage to screen to break the fourth wall in that way, just kind of as a narrative device. But in this season, you're navigating it as kind of a real extension of her psyche. And I'm curious what that development was like, and what was the turning point for you as a writer to make that decision?
Well, that was the real key into the second season in the first place, was the challenge of keeping something fresh from the first season. And it was always part of her psyche for me, not... even at the play stage, that the relationship she had with the audience was the most important one. The idea that you come in and there's a character who's presenting as someone who's completely fine and is promising you a good time, and then actually what's revealed over the process is actually the relationship that you have with her is the most complex, because she's been lying to you, she's been covering things up, she's got a secret. And so actually, hopefully, you discover by the end of the first season that she's that it's been a persona that she's been peddling. And so for the second season, when that persona collapses at the end of the first season, and she's got nothing to hide anymore because the audience knows her secret, the idea of coming back and having the same kind of like eyebrowy, hello, everything's fine, persona felt really disingenuous. And so for me as an actor to begin with, I was like, I can't imagine looking at the camera with the same level of like sass and front that she'd had before, because the audience, she's exposed her secret to the audience. And so it had to be a new relationship. And so going into it, I thought of it very much as an actor from the first place. I was thinking there's something kind of frightening about the audience now, because they know exactly who she is. So she's got to have a different kind of front, which is at the beginning of the first episode, which is I'm fine. I seem to be fine. I feel like I'm fine, except I'm empty and hollow inside and I'm still dying. And so that was the kind of first step. But then once the idea had come about somebody noticing that that she does that, that felt like the real porthole into the next phase.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not alone in this audience, but when that first happened with the priest, it was a game changer. It took my breath away, honestly.
Thank you.
Now, kind of in terms of that, I'm sure there's a lot of actors in the audience today. We're at SAG-AFTRA, of course. So I'd love to tap into a bit about your character development. What does that look like for you in terms of writing your own character versus something that's scripted for you? Just kind of the way you drop into it, does it change at all? How's Fleabag compared to something that you've done on the screen written by somebody else?
I think the depth of knowledge of a character is definitely, when you write it yourself, is undeniable. But really, when I first wrote her, I was writing all the things that felt sort of dangerous to say. And I knew that I could only really give that to myself. Didn't want to give that to anyone else in case it bombed. And then it would be like, that was that bitch's fault, not mine. So I think it was partly that, but also I had this, like, I felt when I was in my mid to late 20s when I first wrote the play, and it came out of a need to play someone who was complex and weird and had these multiple layers and had a persona, and then had somebody truthful underneath and had all that complexity, but it was funny and dark and sort of sexually candid. All of those things were things I desperately wanted to play as an actor anyway. So that's kind of where it was born out of. And I had those experiences before. My first ever play that I performed in was a play called Crazy Love by Che Walker, and he had just written this really angry, posh bride. And but I love that she was angry, because posh brides are like, they're all over the place. But an angry one, and one that had secrets, and that was the first time I'd really felt like, oh, there's something else I can play. And I'd felt the pressure coming out of drama school to basically be a sort of princess, either like a sexy princess or a not sexy princess. That was like the two things, and in one way or another she's a princess, no matter what the story is. And so I wanted to play someone who was a kind of a darker version of that. And then going on, I do disassociate slightly when I'm writing, because I want to shock myself and surprise myself when I'm writing it. And sometimes, I'll write things and be like, oh, I don't want to say that. But those are the moments that, feel dangerous and feel truthful. And I think it's actually a good challenge to make me want to play it as well as, write it.
Yeah. That kind of, your creative partner, Vicky Jones, has said that in terms of your writing process, you want to make your scripts Phoebe-proof, because you have a tendency to, as a writer, always see one step ahead of what's coming. So you kind of intentionally, it's a conscious decision to do the unexpected, is what you mean?
Yeah, completely. And I think probably a lot of actors have this, but I can predict things very quickly in movies. It used to drive Vicky insane, because I'd be like, she'll be able to speak French. Or I'd be like, she's going to end up with him, or like that building's going to burn down, and I could just feel the structure of things. And so much of the work we did when we had a theatre company and we were producing new writing nights, so much of it was, each new writing night we'd give a brief to the writers, which were to challenge one thing in the audience, like make an audience fall in love with the character, make an audience forgive a character of a heinous crime, or like find something that makes an audience laugh and then makes an audience feel sick for laughing. And we used to do these monthly, and I learned so much there about how to surprise your audience. Because as an audience myself, I only ever want to be surprised in a truthful way, not in a kind of like, but I want to be as surprised as much as people surprise me. People surprise each other all the time. And I think with Claire, she's the one I have most fun with, really, the sister character, because the more you think, oh, this is where Claire would be sort of classically anal about something, and it would be in those moments when I'd be like, but that's where you switch it, and that's when she's actually quite cool about something, or she finds something funny. And I think that's where you key into loving a character, when you think you know them, and then actually they're deeper or weirder or cleverer than you thought originally.
Yeah, I love that. Now, your journey to writing was kind of through your own theatre company with Vicky Jones. Your roots are in kind of classical acting training at RADA. So what advice do you have for actors who want to start writing for the first time, to kind of start creating their own work in the way that you have?
Well, do it for a start. Even if you discover that you don't enjoy doing it, or if you don't feel like you're good at it, or if it doesn't go down well, or if you're just not good at it. But I think just try it, because there's something about writing that is you learn so much about character from writing. And I know a lot of actors that like will write themselves letters from their characters and things like that before they actually perform. And I've never been that kind of actor, but I think it's because I want to write as well. But I can see that thing once you're actually writing things down and writing dialogue down, you learn so much more than even in real life. You know, if you write yourself if you just dare yourself to write something truthful that you think and it feels kind of dangerous, because it's like writing a diary that you know no one's going to look in. And that's kind of what it felt like with Fleabag. I just thought, I'm just going to write what will make Vicky laugh, was the first thing, and will make Vicky feel seen and make Vicky, and having that one person in my head was really helpful. But the advice, I think, is write as if you're not afraid. And the same goes for acting. Act like you're not afraid. Or if you weren't allowed, if someone just said, there's no reason to be afraid here, just go for it. And that was the line that I constantly say to myself when I'm writing and acting.
Yeah. And along the way, you've certainly surrounded yourself with people who are kind of mutually inspiring. People like Vicky, I imagine, kind of build a team in addition to the personal process of writing. Yeah.
Oh, and I talk things out a lot, and so I really need collaborators and through this whole process, finding your people, finding your Vicky, and I have an amazing story producer, Jenny, who I met on Killing Eve, who then I just fell completely in love with, and then brought her on to season 2 of Fleabag, and she was instrumental in this season. And I think finding those people you trust, who again you can be unafraid with, you know, you can say, not just is this a bad idea, but you can actually say, because people are only interested in really, really truthful human stories. And I think if you can find people you trust so much that you can go, I sometimes feel like this is the case, and other people might think I'm insane for thinking that, and more often than not people in the room will go, no, we've all felt that. But it's so rare that people say it, and so I think if you can find those people who you can say those things to and with, and then who can dare you to write it down, hold on to them.
Certainly. Now, I know we don't have you forever tonight, so I'm here with Backstage. We're here at SAG-AFTRA. I had a rapid-fire Backstage questionnaire for you, if you don't mind humoring us. It's kind of walk down memory lane for your early career.
Oh, okay.
For starters, how did you first get your SAG-AFTRA card? Was it Fleabag?
I think it was Fleabag.
Okay.
Still confused about what that is.
That's
I
fair,
think it's
fair.
Fleabag. Yeah, Fleabag.
Yeah, we'll say Fleabag. Fleabag is
Definitely
how you got
Fleabag,
it.
yeah.
And we were kind of teasing it in the lobby, but if there's a screen performance that every actor should see, what is it and why?
I'm going to be really self-referential, and I mean, not me. I'm going to say that I will talk about Fleabag because I was so blown away by it, and this is not to single people out for any other reason, but I think Sian Clifford's performance as Claire is a masterclass in how to perform somebody with such depth and complexity, who's also only thinking about her hair the whole time. And I think it's just a really, when you've got those 3 layers, hair, marriage, like ultimate doom of my life. And that's basically what she's always thinking about. I think it was an extraordinary performance, and I've seen her through drama school, and you know, all the way up to, well, you know, where we are now, and she's just been extraordinarily good. And then also I'd say, you know, Andrew Scott is just I don't know how that man does what he does. He's charisma personified, but mainly because he's so live in the moment. And he did Hamlet in the West End, and it's actually it's been recorded. It's on iPlayer. I don't know if you can get that here, but that is a performance that is totally blinding, and just anything Andrew Scott's in.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, in that first dinner scene, in just a handful of lines, you fall in love with him right away. So he's doing his job right.
Yeah, he knows the power of a look, and he knows how to really look at you to the extent that we'll be in shots, and they'll be like filming it, and I'll be like, whoa, like what was that? And he's totally fearless, and he will look at you like he's in love with you. I mean, I paid him to look at me like he was in love with me, which, you know, I'll never regret.
Now, I know straight out of school, it wasn't kind of booking work right away. You hit some dry spots. I'm curious if you have an audition horror story that you could share with us.
I mean, so many. And then also hardly any at all. Like, I remember, I didn't get any work for at least 2 years coming out of drama school, and didn't get any auditions or anything like that. One of the first major auditions that I ever had, which was a big moment for me, was when I had an audition for Downton Abbey, and it was huge, and my agents were like, holy shit. like, don't fuck it up. I was like, don't fuck it up, don't fuck it up. And I prepared for this role, and it was a really moving scene. And it was between one of the sisters and this guy. And it was really, and I know it was meant to be sort of profound and moving and emotional. And I went in and I performed the scene. And honestly, I was like, I have nailed this. Like, I'm moved by what I've done. And the director was like pissing himself laughing. I was like, but like not in a mean way, in a kind of like really enjoying the performance. Like, and I remember being like, oh, because I'd gone there, you know? And I was like, oh, and then he was like, I had no idea this character was funny. And I was like, neither did I. Like, what? And I remember then leaving and calling my agent and saying, I think something weird happened. I think he thought I was doing it as I don't know. Anyway, I didn't get a call back or anything. But then they did release on like my agents called me like a few weeks later saying they've released another casting call for the same character saying, oh, and she's also funny. So it was like an extra dig because it was like I made her seem like she was funny, but it wasn't
Credit
me.
where it's due. That's your creative decision.
That's my little
contribution.
That was pretty
to
mortifying,
yeah.
though.
How about, what is the wildest thing that you've ever done for a job? Have you ever gone that extra mile to kind of book the gig?
Oh God. Oh God. I feel like every time. I mean, the honest truth is, I haven't gone like. I mean, you know, I've dressed up too much. And I've dressed, you know, I was so concerned with like looking like the character early on in my career that I forgot to like act like the character.
Was this for Star Wars? You going full droid look? Or?
Yeah, even though that was a different kettle of fish. I had no idea what was going on there. But I think weirdly, there's one or two jobs, and this is, I mean, okay, actors will understand this, I hope you will, but there's some times when you're like, I'd wake up in the morning and I had spontaneously gone out the night before and I'd be hungover and I would be late. And it was those auditions that I always got. And you know, you start analysing that because the ones I'm prepared for and I'm totally like got the whole look and the line, and I'm sure I must come in with this like energy of like, oh my God, and they're like, oh, I don't know. But then you come in, and I know from being on the other side of it as well, the actors who come in who are just quite comfortable with who they are and just go, this is what I was going to do, and this is who, and bring so much of themselves to it. And even if they're a little bit, I guess the hungover tired thing just forces you to be a bit more natural. I don't know. I mean, it's a dangerous thing to say to people because maybe it was the parts I was going for, but I remember just sometimes when my inhibitions had just gone out the window, I just felt like this is what I'd fucking do, and you know, do you want it? And like more often than not, they'd be the ones that go, and I think you know, I remember that. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, it's bad preparing in that way for an audition because if you go out the night before and then make yourself late, you're just going to be a mess when you get there. But there's something about forcing yourself to be yourself, and it's such a hard trick to play. But.
Yeah, I like that. Well, as a final question for this questionnaire portion, do you have a piece of advice that you would give your younger self when you were first getting your start? Maybe when you were first out of acting school, drama school, what's something that you've learned along the way that you wish you knew back then?
I wish I knew that there's no such thing as getting acting right, because I think at drama school, I went into drama school like, like I want to play characters and I want to go crazy and I can be anyone. I can be like an old man or I can be anything. And I came out being like, I've got to stand like this or I'll never get a job. And like I've got to have like perfect hair and I've got to breathe from my diaphragm and all that kind of stuff. And that really stifled me for ages. And it was only after meeting Vicky, who was sort of like, when I'd do that kind of stuff in front of her, she'd be like, and then I'd be like, then I'd do a bit of, you know, we were working on Fleabag and I'd just be a bit more like me and like the weird quirks that make a person and like your posture or the way that you pause in the middle of a line when there isn't, you know, it's that kind of stuff. And that's what makes it fun as an actor. That's what makes you playful. And it was just like, forget all the other stuff. Like learn your technique if you've got one and then try and forget it. Because just being your own awkward, weird version of that character is the best you can do.
I love that. Well, as a final question, I want to bring it back to Fleabag. If you can't tell, I love season 2 and I love this show. As much as season 2 is about this character's exploration of faith, I really feel like it's also about her finding love and kind of her exploration of love. I thought this was really poignantly explored in the flashback to her mother's funeral when she's saying she has all this love to give and she doesn't know where to give it, and Boo says, I'll take it. And then, of course, Boo ends up dying as well. So I'm curious, at the end of season 2, where do you think Fleabag learns to put her love, all the love that she has to give?
I think she's put it in her own pockets, to be honest. I think Harry Bradbeer, the director of the show, who's such a close collaborator and friend, he said to me, as I was writing it, he was like, you know what you've written? And I was like, what? Because I know he's going to say something that's going to drive me crazy. And he was like, you've written a story of a woman who's learned how to love herself. And I was like, no, I haven't. And he was like, you have. And actually, I think that's the truth. And, I hate like cheesy stuff like that so much, but actually it's there for a reason. And he said, and when we were sort of arguing about it afterwards, he said, you started with a character who's filled with self-loathing, and the only person she really needs to make peace with at the end is herself. And I've always thought it was the camera, and then I thought it was, her family and the priest. And actually, he's right. She didn't. She needs to be able to walk off, say goodbye to us, say goodbye to the priest, and walk away, with grace from her family. Not for good, hope, but just be able to walk down that road and go, I can walk alone now. And she does.
That's great. That's great. I didn't mean to make you repeat the portion of the series that you dislike most, but
No, I love it now.
I do love
he was
it myself.
right, the bastard. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.